Okay, so at the time of making this video, hundreds of Iranian drones moving at rapid speeds, much faster than expected, are heading towards Israel. Most of those are going to be shot down. Their whole purpose is to act as decoys to free up the airwaves for the big boomer missiles that are going to be launched in a relatively short period of time, I presume. The Israelis and the Americans definitely won round one of this conflict, undoubtedly, in their attempts to indenture Iran into a state of perpetual vassalage, much alike their Middle Eastern counterparts. The decapitation strike attempt appears to be at least partly successful. I don't know if it was as successful as they thought it would be, but it undeniably shook up the Iranian chain of command. So much so that I really do think it probably created a lot of panic amongst the ranks. Apparently, some people were abandoning their posts because they thought that they would be targeted. Now, the replacements have already been selected. The Ayatollah issued empty, rhetorical, usual, theatrically laden statement about how you're going to get it this time, right? Now, what I'm concerned about is that Iran is going to strike back. They're going to potentially overstep their boundaries as they're dictated by the Americans and the Israelis. And Trump has basically now gone full mask off. He's saying, well, we're going to support the Israelis, if Iran retaliates for taking out its leaders and violating a half dozen Geneva conventions, which is, totally expected. This is what we said was going to happen. There is no enmity between Netanyahu and Trump. It was all pure theater and masterfully played. One thing you got to hand it to these guys, the Machiavellian level of deceit and subterfuge that they're able to execute is second to none. And they were able to really convince the Iranians that they were going to have these talks on Sunday despite all this stuff, which is why you had these guys camped up in high-rise buildings and not in bunkers. So you got to give props to the Houthis for at least having the operational security hygiene to not make themselves that complacent and vulnerable and succumbing to normalcy bias. Now, I suspected that Iran was finished. I actually, at some point, I thought, okay, this is it. It's over, because they're going to do the exact same thing they did to Hezbollah. They've been targeting the nuclear facility at Natanz, which is a violation of the Geneva Convention, despite the fact that radiation levels have not been detected to have increased. It is a violation of the Geneva Convention. In addition to that, they did this attack, and this is the 0 day, and this is why the attack was so successful. And Israel likely won't get another opportunity like this, because now the airwaves, the airspace over Iran are going to be closed for a long, long time. But they used commercial flights as human shields to fly these sorties, knowing full well that the Iranians would be very reluctant to shoot down planes out of fear that they might accidentally target a commercial plane. This actually happened after the assassination of Soleimani. And those situations weren't nearly as tense as they were right now. So you had hundreds of planes in the skies, like commercial flights, over Iranian airspace while missiles were falling in Tehran. So it's not like, already they're trying to detect stealth aircraft. So it's not like they can just start firing missiles at everything because the airspace is open. There wasn't any NOTAMs, there wasn't any notice by the Israelis that they were going to do this attack. If there was, then Iran would have closed its airspace. And I think we would have seen a different outcome. Now, there's also electronic warfare, there was sabotage, there's Mossad operatives operating inside of Iran. They claim that they actually did some James Bond stuff to disable some of their missile defense, and they were doing counterforce operations as well. So what I mean by that is that they were targeting the missile silo city entrances, and they successfully did that in multiple places. Now, again, Iran is vast, and for us to think that one fell swoop is going to pacify the Iranians, I think would be a bit of an overstatement. However, one cannot deny that if they were to actually have taken out all of the major heads of the military, then that will absolutely impact Iran's ability to stage a formidable response. So, like I said, at the time of making this video, the missiles are inbound. It doesn't appear to be a major attack at this point, like it appears to be on the scale of True Promise 2, but this could just be the first wave. The biggest thing to worry about now is what is Russia and China doing, because they're looking at this rather impotent response by the Iranians and saying to themselves, holy shit, we thought that you guys would buy us a little bit more time. Putin wanted the southern flank opened up. He wanted the West to get fixed in a quagmire in the Middle East. But it appears as though this thing could be over sooner than later. We know how the Israelis operate. They blitzkrieg. They don't care about laws. They seem to have an unlimited victim card that allows them to act with impunity and not play by the same rules as anybody else. So they're going to continue to prosecute this conflict in a manner that is going to yield results, especially if the Iranians continue to exhibit this lackadaisical style of operations, which is going to make them highly vulnerable. Now, the Russians are looking at this, and they're saying to themselves, holy shit, if Iran does become completely destabilized, we're going to have a problem on our southern border near Azerbaijan and the Caspian Sea. And if that is the case, then Europe is going to, and the West in general, they're going to then be freed up. Once Iran is in complete disarray and chaos and civil war, they're going to be able to turn their attention then towards Russia once again. And Putin has to be looking at this level of infiltration and penetration of the Iranians' upper ranks. And he's got to be thinking to himself, holy shit, I need to triple down on security. And for the Kremlin, that's a tall order already as it is. But this also puts Russia in a very dangerous position in that they now have to start conducting their war in a different manner in order to effectuate change quicker, and that their strategic patience will be exploited further when attention turns towards them. So we're going to have to see whether the indecisiveness of the Iranians leads to more assassinations of their top leadership. That a lot of their nuclear scientists are dead. It was pretty bad in terms of nuking their ability to respond effectively. Lots of radars have been taken out apparently, and it appears as though the response so far is minimal. Mind you, we have to measure these responses on longer timelines. Oftentimes people just think it's turnkey and it's instantaneous, in that you can just muster a massive response, especially as your chain of command has been decimated in the way it has. It's going to take a few days, likely, for them to do a big response. They're doing a response right now. I don't know if this is going to be the primary response. Remember, True Promise 2 took about 2 months to percolate. Now, interestingly, they were in the process of conducting a large-scale exercise at the time that this happened. So that they were caught off guard is quite surprising. What I'm concerned about now is that if they do retaliate, and that retaliation is seen as excessive, or if there's false flag components peppered in, then we're going to potentially see the United States dragged into a conventional war. Possibly we're going to see the utilization of the Samson option, which of course is the utilization of nuclear weapons, if the Israelis perceive the threat to be existential. The Iranians have said that now we're going for nukes. We are backing out of the non-proliferation treaty, which is tantamount to saying that we are going to get nuclear weapons, or we're going to pursue one. They claim that they've already amassed enough enriched material, not at these above ground facilities, obviously, but to build, the Israelis are claiming 15 nuclear weapons, okay? So if that is true, then it's a foregone conclusion that now that they've initiated this conflict, it's a fait accompli. They must now go to the finish. And I'm talking about the United States and Israel. They must fight this war until Iran in its leadership has been destroyed. Not Iran as a whole, it's 90 million people, but they have to do regime change at this point. That's how this ends. Okay, unless the Iranians completely roll over and open their leg to the international banksters and multinational corporations, that's how this ends. Which I don't think they're going to do. But the Ayatollah has fallen short of declaring war. But the Russians are going to be in a situation where they're going to be forced to either escalate to de-escalate. The Chinese are going to have to do something because that's their oil that's on fire right now. So their price of oil is going to go higher. Yeah, Trump is moaning about how, it's going to be bad for the price of oil. Look, these guys have lied through their teeth. If you believe anything that Trump and Netanyahu or any of these characters have to say after what has happened today, then you're going to get duped by some kind of cult in SHTF, and they're going to take you under their wing, and they're going to make you do all kinds of weird shit. You just have no street smarts at this point. You need to start really seeing the world for what it is. The world is run by gangsters. Might makes right. Whether you like it or not, that's just the way the world works, okay? So I suspect that Russia is going to have to make a statement. They're going to have to do something because they can't have this level of instability on their southern border. Number one, that's going to be more resources that are going to occupy them on that front, and all eyes are going to turn back towards them. Israel is potentially going to utilize the Samson option. They're just looking for a reason right now to get the United States into this conflict. They must have done some focus groups in the United States or something and determined that MAGA really doesn't care. In fact, they probably want a war with Iran because there are a lot of Christian Zionists who are okay with taking out the Iranian leadership, despite the fact that I don't think the Iranians have ever directly, anyways, targeted Israel, asides, the retaliation for, True Promise 1, True Promise 2, which is retaliation for attacking Iranian embassies and assassinating people on their soil. Probably stuff that, had it happened to us, it would have been an immediate war. It would have been a declaration of war. And so that the Ayatollah has fallen short of doing that is probably why the price of oil has only risen by 8.5%. At one point, it was up to, I believe it was up to 14%. Now, it retraced, and I think the reason why it retraced is because there's a couple reasons why. Maybe they thought that the decapitation strike worked. And they thought that, okay, Iran is going to be thrust into, disarray, and it's going to, degrade into civil war and just all-out anarchy. Maybe that's what they suspected, but I actually think that it's because the decapitation strike failed. Okay, because now this means it's going to be prolonged. And if the Iranians get their act together, this war could go on forever, really, if they start to be more vigilant. However, they're up against Palantir, they're up against stealth aircraft, they're up against submarines, they're up against a lot of infiltration and sleeper cells, terrorist cells. So it's looking like oil is going to stay at 8.5% increase, its biggest increase in 5 years. I suspect, depending on the scope and scale of the Iranian response, that's how we're going to know how high this is going to go. Because if they do exceed that threshold, and the United States, which Trump has already committed, he's already committed that he is going to go to war on Israel's behalf. Okay, like that's a big surprise to anybody. Then that's when oil continues to go up and away. Let's see here. Yeah, so the same kind of hollow, flaccid rhetoric is being stated by the Iranian generals. I really think that they're going to respond in, in the usual fashion. Apparently now we got hundreds of hypersonic missiles inbound. So I guess we're going to have to see, what is the payload of these going to be? Is it going to be like inert warheads like it was last time, where they're able to defeat the missile defense because they weren't packing a heavy payload? Or do they have nuclear weapons on them, and are they going to cross the Rubicon? If that's the case, then it's World War III. I mean, it already is. This is World War III. Make no mistake about it. But then we cross the line of Israel utilizing their final option, which is total war, scorched earth, Samson option, which means the use of nuclear weapons. So we have to see, what is China going to do? They're being very, very quiet. And I'm just, I'm still stunned. I'm stunned that they did it. Here we are. 4 months in, the war with Russia and Ukraine is worse than ever before. Trade war with China and the war with Iran has begun. War is peace. See you tomorrow.